Greetings. I am Dr. Unique Morris Hughes, Director of the DC Department of Employment Services. On behalf of Mayor Muriel Bowser, thank you for joining us for our weekly Wellness Wednesday, hosted by the Office of Paid Family Leave. The Bowser administration has created various platforms to bring awareness to and promote health and wellness while continuously working to close the gap in health disparities, especially in minority communities. This extends to DC's paid family leave program as we ensure families don't feel the burden of choosing between their job security and caring for themselves and their families. We have created this virtual engagement platform that will feature local experts who will discuss various topics around health, fitness, and overall wellness. Our paid family leave team are on hand to offer wellness tips and preventive care guidance. For questions about benefits and how to apply, visit dcpaidfamilyleave.dc.gov or give us a call at our contact center at 202-899-3700. Be well.
Good morning and hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this week's Wellness Wednesdays. My name is Dr. Faith Gibson Hubbard, and I am excited to join you today. I am the Executive Director of Mayor Bowser's Thrive by 5 DC and the Chair of Mayor Bowser's Thrive by 5 Coordinating Council. And Thrive by 5 is excited to partner with the Department of Employment Services Office of Paid Family Leave. We know just how important that resource is to so many families. And with paid family leave in the District of Columbia, district workers can receive 3 different types of leave: parental, medical, and family leave. And so with that backdrop in mind, we want to have a conversation today on planning to thrive and how we can really focus on what it takes in order to support both our youngest district residents and their ability to thrive, but also their family. I am really honored today to be joined by 2 amazing women, and I noticed we all have natural hair, so that was really exciting. I think that's also something great to represent. But by the first person who is really important to me, Lashada Ham Campbell, who is the owner of my 2-year-old daughter's Child Development Center, Petite Scholars, and also Dr. Dia Sloan, who is a family physician and assistant professor at Howard University's College of Medicine. So good morning, ladies.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you.
I'll give you each an opportunity to introduce yourselves and just share more about why this area of thriving is important to you. So I'll start first with you, Lashada.
Oh, good morning. Thank you. As introduced, I'm Lashada Ham Campbell. I am a nearly 20-year educator in urban schools. I was a teacher, a principal, and I've spent the last 8 years owning, operating, creating early childhood programs. Mine are Petite Scholars. We have 3 locations, soon to be 4, in DC, all in Ward 5. I'm a 4th generation Washingtonian. Literally grew up in the house that's across the street from the original Petite Scholars location. So in phasing out of the urban school system and being a principal, let's backtrack. I was a principal when DC started the initial preschool expansion and started to transition from Head Start in elementary schools to creating the Preschool 3, Pre-K 4 programs. And then found this new passion for early childhood education. Like I would go into those classrooms because that would be like my safe space respite to kind of get away from the chaos of school, and then would see these 3- and 4-year-olds doing these amazing things. So I didn't initially have a background in early childhood education. So post that experience and finding that passion, I became Montessori certified and then started taking additional courses. I went to Howard University, so I have an undergraduate degree in psychology and a master's in educational psychology. I also have a school administration degree from Trinity. But all of that to say, it was a kind of long winding path that led me to the passion of what is now a broad early education program in DC. So yeah, I think I said it all. I think, sorry about that. I haven't done intro in a while.
Well, that background was really helpful, I think, in showing your passion in this space of early childhood development. So Dr. Sloan?
Sure. So I am Dia Sloan. I'm an assistant professor at Howard University in the College of Medicine, Department of Community and Family Medicine. I am a clinician. I think I'm a teacher. I think I'm a community advocate, kind of all wrapped in one. So my days are varied, but I think the goal is ultimately to make people healthier and more well. And so I think that kind of rooted my passion in medicine in general, and it's kind of just been a thread throughout my training. So I did medical, I've gone to medical school, University of Maryland in Baltimore, so local-ish to the DC area. I'm a native of North Carolina, have some public health background as well. And so I'm excited to be in DC. I think that working in this clinical space and this educational space where I am, we have an excellent opportunity to really change how health is delivered, how our patients care for themselves, but also care for their families. And I think that starts at the root of the family unit. And so I think, again, we have to thrive them and survive them before they're even here. And so I think that the resources and the energy that we put into that will have some long-standing effects. So I'm excited to see that. And I think that that's why I'm here, essentially. So thank you for having me, and I'm excited too.
Thank you for being here. So I think you all really capture what we want to focus today's conversation on, which is this intersection between health and early learning and how that supports families in thriving. And I know with you, Dr. Sloan, when a mother or a family is even thinking about having a child, they're family planning, or maybe they're not.
Yeah.
Some of the things, because sometimes it can be surprise. I know it was for me with my son.
Mm-hmm.
But what are some of the things that you could even be thinking about towards this intersection of both health and early learning, even when you're thinking about just the inception point?
Yeah. So that's a powerful question, and even I think the intervention stages may be plentiful. But when I think about reproductive health, I think early years. I think preteen years, when kids are getting curious about their health and how things work. What is their family plan? Have they thought about children? Have they thought about what that means, what their vision may be in 10 or 15 years? It goes back to, what do you want to be when you grow up? But also, what type of family do you want to have? Do you want to have a family? I think that it starts with intention and teaching and education, maybe even that early on. And then that develops into, okay, maybe there's prep, maybe there's not prep, but I understand that maybe certain actions may cause me to bring children into the world, or I'm ready to have children in my world, in my space, in whatever capacity that looks like. How do I nurture that? And so I think it even starts with, what does it look like for you? And then we can say, okay, well, let me make sure that you're food secure, right? Because if you want to be food secure, and that's on your high, obviously it's a need, but it's high on your priority list in your future, then how can we support that? And how can we help you be independent, maybe in your home, growing your own food? What other resources can we give you so that you feel you have the nutritional status to be healthy enough to carry a child? And then what does the actual social space look like? What are your family values, and how can we attribute that, as well as their development? So there are going to be several resources that we may be able to implement in the home space that people just aren't aware of, that can help facilitate early learning and development in the home. And then how does that have longstanding impacts into their higher education, and then them turning families over, and then generations kind of repeating that same thing, building better on top of better. So.
What I also hear in what you're saying is this thread of community and how important the environment around you is. Because we know that environment, even early on, and I want to stay with you, Dr. Sloan, is really important as a part of the village that is surrounding you and supporting you in this early stages of bringing your baby into the world when they get here, right? And that also connects to early learning. So can you talk more about, even in the perinatal period, what does early learning and being able to meaningfully make those connections look like in that period?
Yeah. I think experience is the best teacher sometimes, and we need to talk about the experiences people have had. I think that knowing people in the community, knowing your neighbor, your sister, your niece, or someone has had an experience that you would like to maybe nourish or change for yourself, then that's what you can build on. So we kind of have to scaffold on what people know, and we don't know what they know until we ask them, because in a lot of clinical spaces, there may be some mistrust or, you want to feel heard. The Black maternal voice specifically is not necessarily that uplifted. And so maybe you want to say it, you need to say it, but hey, like, what are you thinking about this? I know you're talking to your friends and family about what it's like or what to expect or like, what was your experience? And so, okay, and you did this for your child. Oh, and 5-10 years later, I'm looking at, again, this community of people that were kind of built on some of these early learning foundations. So how can we make that link for them? It's hard to see something that's kind of theoretical in the moment. You're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I hear that I should be doing these things now to help with my child in their early learning and their development so that when they're school aged, maybe their reading level is on par or beyond, right? Their developmental skills are beyond, they are refined. And what I'm doing right now doesn't seem like it would implement that. And so we kind of have to link some of those actions. Your behaviors may increase the risk of your children having this, but also not kind of framing it in a risk adverse way, but saying, if you do this, these are positive outcomes that happen. We can talk about the benefits of breastfeeding or any other type of nutritional supplement for children and how that impacts their growth and their learning long term. So how can I make that link for you? So you may want to make the changes.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so exciting about where we are now with the Department of Employment Services, Office of Paid Family Leave. And sometimes you need your own time off to be able to plan that, right? There is a lot that's going on. And that period moves so quickly. Just one other question for you, Dr. Sloan, before transitioning to Lashada. But, people tell you to do a lot of things when you're pregnant, right? You want to help stimulate your baby's mind, even in the womb. And so you should play classical music, or in my case, I was trying to play old school hip hop, but
Yeah.
I wanted my baby to be connected
Sure.
to. But should you read to your baby? Do all those things actually work to really help stimulate your child's mind so that when we are handing them off to Lashada and Petite Scholars, they are already attuned to those things?
Yeah. I think that we have to just remember the science and the development, the things that a body needs to be whole and fully functional. And so those are going to be keeping your body in a state of health that's basically impeccable. You want to be as healthy as possible when you're ready to take on a child. And then all of the other things that come. Yes, there have been several studies that have been released. Play music. I think that you're bringing your baby into an environment. And so there are going to be those natural sounds that happen already, and so what does the sound of your life look like? The baby's going to hear that. And if maybe it's negative sounds, right? Maybe it's positive sounds, but I absolutely think that impacts long term. And those are going to be like the main things to focus on, making sure that you're nutritionally sound, taking folic acid, making sure you're hydrating, but also protecting yourself if you're being active, if you're being sexually active, and making sure that you are in the best physical shape that you can be. I think that that's the main thing. And then as your environment kind of impacts the child, you'll see exactly how, once we hand them over, how that develops into their own individual style.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Lashada, the baby's here.
Yes.
And I know I had no idea what to expect. But that early learning piece, I think so much of what you talked about in being in public schools and probably what you were seeing there and the types of environments you wanted to ensure were created for children even younger.
Yes.
Tell us about that transition for families and how you share with them this journey of early learning, not just in the dropping off, right?
Oh, no.
But also how they are participating in that.
Yes. Let's start with the scarcity of early learning access. Like, we don't have enough slots for all of the families who actually need it. So I just want to preface with, don't wait until the baby is here to look for childcare. Like, in our instance, most families join us by taking a tour in their first trimester. So I often know that people are pregnant before the closest people to them know that they are pregnant. Like, the word has started to spread where it's like, you have to, in the very first trimester, go secure a spot at a childcare center, or look for a nanny, or whatever that may look like for you for childcare, just because it's not easy to come by. And then the second part is, even during the tour, I tell families things as much as, I know that there is the emphasis on breastfeeding, but that's not my place. However, I truly believe like breast is best. So I try to say to families, you know, like, are you thinking about breastfeeding, and talking about like bringing milk to the program and having, you know, adequate nutrition. So starting with the early nutrition, but, you know, just do your best. You know, try to breastfeed as long as you can, but because they're entering the program as well, please introduce the bottle, you know, sparingly, but just enough so that the child is adjusted to the bottle, because we can't support breastfeeding in the center because no one can do that for you. So, you know, there's that minutia that I learned to have conversations early on about being very gentle around breastfeeding, because even for those who want to do it and who are adamant about caring about breastfeeding, it doesn't always work out for them. But then moving towards like nutrition in the program, I saw as a principal, I saw the horrible nutrition we were providing to children. So even for me, designing what we would offer at the center. So for example, across campuses, we have 100 children that we're feeding. It's very difficult to get a toddler to eat something that you want them to eat, but to get 100 collectively to eat food that has been prepared.
A hero.
Yes, but providing hot meals. So, you know, 3 out of the 5 days is to eat a hot meal, because I know nutritionally hot meals are better than, you know, and then looking at the content. A lot of our stuff is, my husband's a chef, so he makes the food for the program. So making sure when available, we can use organic. You know, that's not everybody's need, but hey, it's available. We know that this was grown in a very safe way. So let's try to incorporate that as much as possible. You know, not offering juice in the center, offering fresh fruits. Like we don't offer anything out of a can or a package. Well, we offer dry goods or package, unfortunately, but dry goods. But like fresh fruit. So it was this whole idea around nutrition from birth until they leave us, because we know nutrition is extremely important when they're developing in those first 3 to 5 years. But I was at schools where every day it was a different color cereal for breakfast. It was, you know, things like corn dogs and syrup and you know, high fructose corn syrup was in everything. So our goal is definitely to like try to stay towards things that are more nutritionally sound. But that's, you know, like the nutrition aspect of it. The other part is we have developmental checklists. So these are the milestones that your child are supposed to reach by any given age. And then we're also partnered with early stages who help train the teachers to look for things that could possibly be, I hate the word red flags in this case, but red flags, so that we can tell families like, you know, there's something that seems a little bit different, and broaching that conversation in a very gentle way. Maybe you want to go seek an expert opinion or talk to your pediatrician about it. I mean, because we are not the experts, but we see hundreds, if not thousands of babies. So just see if everything is going the way that we think that it should be going, and speak to an expert about that. And I don't know what else you wanted me to touch on, Faith. I'm sorry. So we can
about how to help parents know what to do. So let's talk about
yes. A lot of, I was going to say,
let's use COVID as the example.
Yes.
From home, both from a school-age child, but also in particular, my daughter, who's very spicy.
Yes.
And bringing her home, I think really speaks to also how the Child Development Center also has to be able to connect with the family in the learning experience.
Yes.
So how do you help families be able to make those connections? Because kids learn so much. They blossom so beautifully in these educational environments. Yes. But we also know that it's also important for families to feel empowered with those resources too at home. So how do you work with families on that?
So we started with providing the schedule of the day. So a lot of families were interested, like, what is the day in the life of my toddler at the center? And then for us, we break each activity down into 10 to 15 minute increments. So knowing that your 2 and 3-year-old, and the 1-year-old, that's a whole nother experience, but the 2 and 3-year-olds can only attend to things on average for 10 to 15 minutes at a time. And if you get a really good period of like, oh, they're really enjoying this experience, maybe you could get 20 minutes, but not to expect anything more than that. I think initially, excuse me, parents at home were just kind of feeling like, I need to work. Where can I put them so that they can be still and they can do things on their own so I can work? And it's just like, that's not what we do. Like, we are very hands-on. And for their learning, I tell parents early on, because a lot of the early childhood model develop out of looking at the deficits of children. But so parents always feel this fear of they're going to be behind. They're not going to be prepared. They're not going to be ready for school, or once they get to school, they're going to be failing in some way, shape, or form. But in the early years, it's language and experience and time. So how much are you talking? Like, I know the district has the sing, talk, read. I might have put them in but like sing songs. We've noticed with our infants and toddlers, they can sing before they can talk. So they will sing a nursery rhyme, it's still with some babbles in there, but before they're ever trying to ever say a sentence to you, they're trying to sing a nursery rhyme in its entirety. So clearly the research is great, because we see that children respond to that well. Sitting down and reading stories. So that's learning to hold a book, learning that the words go from left to right, learning how to turn the page of a book. Those are all pre-reading skills that come in handy. We often tell our families, like in our work that we do with the toddlers, all the scooping and the pouring and the spooning, it's all to get the wrists moving and get those wrist muscles moving, because now we're in a tablet-centered society where you're just pushing a button. And so there's so many children who are having difficulty cutting and rolling Play-Doh. So those things that are old school, classical preschool still need to be in effect, because they were well researched and they're helping the fine motor development of the child. And then just fresh air. We know toddlers need to jump off things. It drives us crazy, but that is just something innate in them. So you have to, like, even for my own boys, Faith knows, like, they have to do swimming and taekwondo and soccer, and because they had so much energy. We were in our DC row house and they were driving me crazy because it was not enough space. But I started this whole thing of picking the little one up from daycare, because he was at Petite Scholars, and taking the other preschooler, and we would literally, right from getting picked up, go straight to the park, and I would let them run, ride their bike, get all that energy out. And so by the time it was time for dinner and we needed to do an activity and it was time to settle for bed, they were exhausted and they were ready. There's so much research that just shows we don't give our children enough time to play and use their skills. Sorry, see, the natural hair things mean I washed my hair this morning and it's still just dripping dry, and I'm like, oh, that looks crazy. Like, what is that running down? Sorry. But no, but just give the children, and even with us at childcare, like Faith will tell you, we are out an hour and a half, weather permitting, in the morning, the same in the afternoon. And then we use what's around us as education. So for us, we do see themes that are seasonally based. So we were going to go outside. We're going to talk about the changing of the weather, the changing of the trees. Look at what's around you. Listen to the sounds that you hear. Because we're in a major street, they know the difference between a fire truck and an ambulance. And that surprised me. When they hear it coming, they're like, that's an ambulance. And I'm like, how did you? Oh, okay. So even their sense of just tuning into, the differences in sounds, because I don't think I can identify what's an ambulance versus a fire truck for a long distance. But, we explore our neighborhood. So we go to the monastery, which has all of this beauty with flowers and a koi pond. So we just want to be, as much as the fullness of what the human experience is, give that to toddlers and start to teach them, like, enjoyment in life comes through learning. Enjoyment in life comes through experience. Enjoyment in life comes through walk outside in the community. Enjoyment in life comes from learning how to get along with your peers. I think that's the other thing that is missing a lot with all this individual work time, is that there isn't enough socialization. So, I know I read a lot of research about like ADHD and things of that nature. And it's being said, like, children haven't learned how to attend, how to focus, how to engage with peers, how to have conflict with a peer, and then be able to make up for that and even settle it on their own. So a lot of times when the toddlers are getting into little tiffs, we just kind of sit back and wait. It's not an immediate jump in. And there are other toddlers who will come and correct them and say, that's not nice, or you give that back, or don't snatch things, so they're even learning the rules of engagement and social, interactions from the experience in childcare and the experience with one another. So if we just look at them fully as tiny human beings, what do you want this human being to be like when they are 20 plus years later, and you just start that foundation. But I think for parents, just to realize, like, going to the grocery store, naming items, talking about money. I remember I had a little cousin where he always asked for McDonald's. So to avoid McDonald's, I would say, I don't have money. And then finally one day he's just like, but you have a card, you know? So there are so many things that they're fully, like they're paying attention to how we're interacting with society, and they're creating their idea of how things work in everyday life. And so that it doesn't have to feel so forced. But then once it comes down to the specific activities, for us, because of COVID, it became, how do we show parents what we do? And how do we make that meaning for them? And even coming from Faith, she suggested like packets. I think in the beginning, I was still such in a state of shock. And I'm like, well, if packets will work for you, I can make that work, because as a teacher, I love centers and small groups. So I'm like, I would show that, and we work that way anyway, but it was, so we started making videos. This is what we're doing. This is why it's important. Even the videos of the teachers reading, so they can still be connected to their teacher, and hear their voices, and then the package of activities. So we span everything from art to math activities. So we try to send things home that could get repeated use as much as possible, so the parents could build a little portfolio or a little shelf or a little area where the toddlers could have the experience of going to get whatever activity they like and engaging in it as well. So because of that, and then back to just how we're like re-entering the space, we're following the CDC guidelines. So taking temperatures, lots of sanitizing, lots of cleaning, and a lot of it, even if it's not spelled out, you start to figure it out on your own during the course of the day, because the Lysol spray, for example, to me is so chemically. We had a lot of it. We're probably one of the few places in the world that had this abundance of Lysol spray, because we didn't really use it that much, because we would just sanitize and disinfect with cleaners. But it's like, hey, we'll spray the spray when you go outside to play, so that if there's something lingering in the air, we can clean the air with the disinfectant, but then you're out of the space and it has time to like get everything settled. Because that's one of my concerns now. I'm like, with the added use of all of these chemicals, how is it going to impact our children and their health? And trying to be conscious of that as well, because this is going to be a new phenomenon. I know we used them before, but I don't think we've ever used them to the extent that we're using them now. And on surfaces, that's one thing, because it's time to kind of disintegrate, but in the air. So we've also incorporated like air purifiers, because I know the air gets stale, the air is stagnant. And so a way to just kind of like recirculate and clean the air in the space. So we're learning as we go, because we know everything is changing for now. For example, now our 3-year-olds are wearing masks if they're willing, if they're participating, because there's just this added sense of like keeping the children as safe as possible, and the staff are wearing masks and using gloves while the children are present at the center as well.
And it's just a very different environment. And I think this space of early learning, whether it's from maternal health, you know, because some of those appointments now have gone to telemedicine, or or that sense of community, that thread that both you, Dr. Sloan, started, and then also that you mentioned, Lashada, I think even in talking about how the toddlers can resolve their own differences, that community is really how we learn and we're able to thrive. So I just want to thank you, ladies, for just sharing your insights today with us about how we can thrive, how we can plan to thrive. And I think that's really through that thread of community. And because I heard it both from you both. And so I think that that is really what we can take away, because even now in this socially distant time, that thread of community is really important. I'll never forget, that's my daughter, went back to Petite Scholars. She was so excited to be back with her community. And I know even for my friends who are experiencing pregnancy, talking with them even more about what their experiences are and being more transparent in what my experience was is also supportive for them, because we need that community even more. So I just want to thank you, ladies, so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Insights. And I also want to thank everyone who's watching for joining us for today's Wellness Wednesdays. And if you want to learn more about Thrive by 5 DC, which I hope you do, I invite you to come check out our page at thriveby5.dc.gov. And also make sure to stay connected with the Office of Paid Family Leave, and just to figure out really what is paid family leave and what does that mean to you, by visiting their website, dcpaidfamilyleave.dc.gov, and joining their mailing list, because you never know when this resource might be something necessary for you. You can also follow the Department of Employment Services at DOES, so DOES_DC on Twitter and on Instagram. So again, thank you so much
Thank you.
for joining us.
Thank you.
Great conversation, and it was a pleasure to share this time with you lovely ladies. And thank you again for joining us for Wellness Wednesdays.